goes. Welcome to the December meeting of the Regional Operations and Safety Advisory Committee. I'm Sandy Mislitz of the Capital District Transportation Committee. Myself and Andrew Tracy kind of co-lead this working group, or should say advisory committee. Today we have a pretty good agenda with a number of items. I'm going to share my screen real quick. In terms of introductions, I'll just read through another person. We won't go through the entire list, but you'll see the list of attendees in the meeting summary following the meeting. I'll share my screen now so you can see the today's agenda. And hopefully you can see that okay. So today we have a number of items. First, I'm going to run through a brief overview of our some crash data analysis for 2019, including a little bit on some upcoming work we're doing on high frequency crash location data. That will be followed by and kind of set up a conversation on our Capital Coexist mini grant program, which we will then follow with an update on our Transportation Incident Management Committee conversation from October. Andrew will lead that conversation along with staff from NISDOT. Andrew will also present some updated data related to our ongoing kind of coverage of the transportation trends related to COVID-19. We'll also briefly talk about the new US DOT Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, some upcoming planning activities at CDTC, and then we'll talk about our meeting schedule and wrap up the meeting thereafter. So to get us started today, I'll start with the crash data and high frequency crash location data. Excuse me. So just as a reminder, one of the things that CDTC has to do as a metropolitan planning organization is participate in the Safety Performance Management program, which is the federal method of taking data and creating, using a data-driven approach to make investment and policy decisions. One of those performance areas is safety. There are 5 safety performance measures that we'll talk about, and they help us to assess what's going on the regional roadway system with fatality and serious injuries on all public roads. It also helps the state carry out the Highway Safety Improvement Program for New York. NISDOT and CDTC have to establish and report on safety targets. We typically, and have been since this kind of program was initiated around that 2017, have been adopting, CDTC has been adopting the targets set by NISDOT for the entire state. So we've been kind of tracking how we've been performing against the percent change in data with whatever the target is that's set, and how we measure up against that as a region. The state is required to hit 4 out of 5 of those safety performance measures, or they can, if they don't meet 4 out of 5, they can show some significant progress, and I'll talk about what that means. So, whoops, I'm sorry. Jumping ahead here. So in the 2019 annual report, NISDOT is required to submit to the Federal Highway Administration an annual assessment of their Highway Safety Improvement Program. The Highway Safety Improvement Program basically encompasses all uses of the federal fund source, Highway Safety Improvement Program funding, as well as the entire overview of the safety program here in New York State. As part of that, the performance management process requires the state to submit their performance targets and track their progress. And this graph on your screen shows the 2018 data. Safety data is a little tricky the way the federal rules are written, in the sense that it kind of looks back at past data rather than looking at what's happening on the roadway right now. There's a lot of data cleanup, and it takes time for that whole process to happen at the state level as well as at the national level. So there's a big lag between when we set targets and when we were actually assessing what happened on the roadway system. But as you can see from this graph, these are the 5 performance measures for safety. We look at the number of fatalities on the roadway system, the rate of fatalities, the number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries, and number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. So then in 2018, NISDAT set 5 targets, as you can see, with an expected reduction target off of the baseline of various percentages for each of those targets. And it was a pretty aggressive at the time line of thinking. I think they have been a little more conservative in how they've developed these targets since then. And 2018 data is now available to assess how we did. And as you can see, we made 3 out of the 5 targets. We did not hit all 5. As I said earlier, we can demonstrate, though, we had made significant progress in the state, because if you look back at the 5-year rolling averages, and not to get too technical with this, but the way the data is actually calculated, they look at 5 years worth of data so that any one year where you have something unusual happen, it doesn't skew the numbers. Something as flagrant as, say, like the Schoharie limousine crash, where you had a mass casualty situation, can throw these numbers off. So this 5-year rolling average attempts to smooth some of those data points a bit. But as you can see in this graph, we have made as a state significant progress in all of the different categories. And so I think that will play out well for New York State moving forward. We're waiting to see the 2019 data become available, which is not yet available. Usually it should be available in this month of December, because it's been a full year. And we'll take a look at how we did in 2019. Last I heard, we also did not meet targets in 2019, but I will have to wait and see the data to talk about that. So what does this mean for the capital region? So this chart kind of shows the reduction target that NISDAT had in 2018 by percentage. Again, because of the raw numbers, we certainly can't compare our number of fatalities to that of the state. So we're looking at a % reduction. And again, because our numbers are smaller, it's going to be harder to hit. So we're really just looking at, are we following the state trends? And as you can see, for fatalities and the rate of fatalities, we were on track with reducing fatalities in the region. But for serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries, and for non-motorized, we actually saw an increase in the time period that we reviewed. So we do feel like there's more work to be done. The following charts show the trend line in a little more clear fashion, so you can see how we're tracking. With the fatalities, we're downward trending just a little bit, but one could argue we're flat. With serious injuries, again, a slight increase. The fatality rate we're seeing decline. The serious injury rate, a slight increase, maybe a little wobble over the couple of years. With non-motorized fatalities, we have seen a decline in the last 2 years, but on the serious injury side, we've seen a little bit of an increase. So that sets the stage on the national scene of what goes on with the region on our performance measures, and here at CDTC as part of our performance management process. In terms of the data itself, I'm certainly not going to show you a whole slew of data points here because there would be too much. And frankly, as you can see, even in this first slide, 1 year's worth of data isn't going to change what we summarized in the divisions plan and in some other work we've done in the last couple of years. But the bulk of our crashes in terms of the fatal and serious injury, there's more or less split evenly between what's owned by the state and what's owned by other entities. the cities, the towns, the villages, the counties, and a few other types of roadway owners. So they're kind of split almost down the middle. With the different crash types, and just as a reminder, for all fatal and serious injury crashes, the largest chunk are vehicles hitting a fixed object of some sort, followed by a whole slew of other and unknowns where there wasn't enough information in the police crash report to determine what was happening at those particular crash sites. Pedestrians, right angles, rear ends, but primarily motor vehicle on motor vehicle or motor vehicle against a fixed object were the major crash types. But when you break that down into who is getting killed and what type of crash is causing the fatalities, you'll see the fixed objects and the pedestrians are the top two for our region. The police reported contributing factors. I didn't have time to pull the 2019 data for this, but continue to be unsafe speed, failure to yield right away, alcohol involvement, driver inattention, what's termed pedestrian error or confusion. Typically, the coding of a mistake of a pedestrian in the roadway, failure to keep right, passing or lane usage improper, and then traffic control disregard, as well as a smattering of others. So one of the things that we're doing internally now to break this down to be more meaningful to our member agencies in the region, meaning the communities, police agencies, and what have you, is we're going to be creating a series of maps to kind of highlight where things are happening and why things are happening. We're focusing on fatal and all injury crashes to ensure we have enough data points, number one, to make this analysis meaningful. And it shouldn't surprise anyone, you know, looking at the patterns on the map, you know, the higher density cities, certain, you know, you have more VMT, have more activity in terms of travel, and tend to have the denser clusters of some of the fatal and injury related crashes in the region. When you break out the different crash types a bit, you'll see that interestingly, the yellow are the collisions with motor vehicles, which tend to be in sort of the more urban areas of the region, whereas the purple are collisions with some kind of a roadside object. You know, perhaps the vehicle left the roadway and hit a tree, hit the guide rail, hit a signpost. All of those kinds of things are in that purple color, which interestingly tend to be on the sort of the more rural areas of the region, the outskirts of the region. Blues and reds represent collisions with pedestrians and bicyclists, and they're kind of scattered, and I have pull those out for your use. And then we also have a few of the points in black, which are collisions with animals, so deers, dogs, what have you. In terms of just the 2019 year, this is just in 1 year, all of the fatal and police reported injury crashes. So you can see again those concentrations in the cities, some high volume transportation corridors. You can start to see Route 50, you can see Central Avenue, you can see Route 9 and 146 in Clifton Park. You can start to see some of the key roadways in the data. In terms of pedestrian crashes, again, you'll see a concentration in some of the three big cities of Schenectady, Albany, and Troy. Certainly Colony, you see a cluster here in Clifton Park, Saratoga Springs, Boston Spa. Tend to have the greatest concentrations. When you look at the bicycle crashes, you kind of see a similar pattern. Again, these are fatal and all injury bicycle crashes as reported to the police, or by the police, I should say. So you see a similar pattern there as well. So the next thing that we're going to be doing with the crash data is we're going to play with a new tool available to us in ArcGIS Pro, which is the next generation of mapping software that we have access to at CDTC. And through that software, there's a tool that will allow us to calculate fatal and injury crashes per mile, or any sort of crash data per mile. It's a segmented sort of approach. I'm still learning and playing with the sensitivity analysis piece of it. And I'll zoom in so you can see a little closer detail. This is the city of Troy. And as you can see, you have Route 7 Hoosick Street right here as it crosses the river. The reds indicate the higher density of crashes, and the yellows are kind of the next tier below that. I did not color code. There's 5 total ranges in this analysis. I didn't color code the lower 3. So these are the top, the yellow and the red represent the top 2 tiers of crash densities or crashes per mile. But you can see that you're not surprised to see a roadway like Hoosick Street with high volume and a high number of crashes color-coded red. But when you get into the secondary roadway network in the city, it's a bit surprising to see the reds pop up there as well. So these are the kinds of things I'm going to be digging into, and we're using this tool to help screen the network for where we need to get traffic volume data in order to calculate some rates. To see if these are, real problems in terms of, not that they're not real, but in terms of a data analysis, so that we can do some comparisons and learn more about what's going on at some of these locations. So that is a very, very quick overview of where we're going with the crash data here at CDTC. I think by the time our next meeting happens in 2021, we'll have some more to add on not only the 2019 data, but the 2020 data. But did anybody have any questions about what they observed? Okay, hearing none. I started with that.
Hey, Sandy.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Just a quick question. The data that you're showing, if I have our GIS person reach out to you or someone at CDTC, can you share that data with them on a municipality level so that we can incorporate it into our information?
Absolutely.
Are you the best person to just contact?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. So, we kind of use that just as a kind of tracking tool, more or less, for us in the region. And, it allows us to kind of stay on top of the trends going on in the region. And this connects to our next topic of discussion, which is the Capital Coexist Mini Grant Program. One of the things that we said in New Visions when we did that very robust data analysis, we're adding into now the 2019 data and the 2020 data and all of that, is to continue to monitor what's going on and make sure we're not seeing any new things happen in the region that we're not familiar with. Within New Visions, we established a concept for safety that focuses on developing a holistic and systemic approach to safety that incorporates engineering, education, and enforcement, and builds on some of the work we've done in our local road safety action plan and New Visions, and certainly some of the state safety action plans, the pedestrian safety action plan, and the upcoming roadway departure safety action plan, which we'll talk more about. The other thing that we said in New Visions is to continue the practice of prioritizing safety for the most vulnerable roadway users, not only pedestrians and bicyclists, but also motorcyclists, which we discovered in our local road safety plan, have need some attention. Children, older adults, and those with disabilities. And then also to create a culture of empathy and responsibility among drivers, pedestrian, bicyclists, and anyone who shares the roadways. And that's the spirit behind Capital Coexist, is to provide it's basically an awareness campaign to ensure that everyone who uses the roadway system, whether you be a bicyclist, a pedestrian, or a driver, can use the roadway safely. Our regional emphasis areas, as a reminder, before I turn it over to Jen Saponis, we had identified 6 primary emphasis areas: intersections, lane and roadway departures, vulnerable users, at-risk age or demographic groups, such as older drivers or younger drivers, behavior, and then speed. And within these areas that we think the potential exists for expanding Capital Coexist, which is the program that Jen will be speaking about, into CDTC's comprehensive safety education and awareness program. We had within the safety white paper, as a reminder, 3 recommendations to develop that Capital Coexist program into the awareness campaign: provide law enforcement and others with data, educational tools, and any training that might be needed to impact road user behavior, and to expand CDTC's collaborations with advocacy groups, schools, and other transportation safety stakeholders. When we wrote New Visions, we didn't have COVID. And we anticipated being out in the community, attending community events, distributing educational materials related to a wide range of traffic safety topics. Unfortunately, none of that has been able to happen. And that ties into Jen's presentation today, as she describes what we have done with the Capital Coexist Traffic Safety Ambassador Program to date. And that will follow that presentation with a brainstorming session, excuse me, on what to do and how to expand that program moving forward. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Jen, and I will turn it over to you to kind of give that overview of the campaign to date.
Sure. So I do have a couple of slides, if you're able to make me host so I can share that. You're muted, Sandy, so. Oh.
Sorry, you should be able to share now.
Okay.
Okay.
So, like Sandy said, we are getting ready to release a solicitation for our Traffic Safety Ambassador program for next year, or what we refer to as our Capital Coexist mini grants. And Sandy already went through the goals and major objectives of this program, but it was launched in 2016, and we saw it as a way to kind of bring our regional approach to bicycle and pedestrian safety more locally. We had launched Capital Coexist as kind of like a separate campaign in 2009. We produced materials and we went to events, and CDTC staff tried to do a lot of the engagement on bicycle and pedestrian safety. We hosted some enforcement training and a variety of events and different initiatives. And we saw that there were a lot of groups in cities, towns, and villages doing safety programming. And we thought maybe, we could help them and expand our reach by giving them some support and funding for their projects and programs. So it's really a capacity building program. The grants are very small, with a maximum grant of $5,000. The match requirement is 25%, and it can be cash or in kind. We have provided grants to local governments, to nonprofits, to first responders, including police departments. Since 2016, we've funded 34 different projects, which has leveraged over $70,000 in public and private funds. And there's been projects in 14 separate municipalities in all of the counties in our region. And we give folks about a year to complete their project. So all projects are done by the end of the year, but really they're mostly done between May and October. And we specifically outline types of projects that are eligible. Well, it's not limited to these. We try to provide some ideas to get people motivated and thinking. So anything related to safe routes to school, walking school bus projects, slow down campaigns, bike rides, helmet reward programs, bike skill training, pop-up events and demonstration projects, and development of educational materials and tools. So basically anything to do with encouragement, education, enforcement, and even, you know, with the demonstrations, you could say engineering. And we've seen a lot of success with doing the demonstration projects and skills training and bike rodeos. These have been really popular projects that a lot of communities and nonprofits have engaged with our program and asked for support on. And they have mostly been focused on bicyclists, but the program includes bicyclists, pedestrians, motorists, all road users, but we just kind of keep on getting the same interest in the same types of projects, which have been great, but we would like to expand. So this year we have $25,000 available. Again, there's a 25% match, which can be cash or in kind. We are looking to expand interest and project types. They need to be low budget, big impact. The funds really only, they can't cover any sort of permanent infrastructure or signage, or it's very limited to educational types of activities. And given everything that's going on, projects, events, anything that's proposed must be compliant with public health regulations and guidance around COVID-19, and hopefully, or, you know, maybe things that are related to COVID recovery, and how we can help kind of facilitate that. So that's what I have for slides, and I would be happy to answer any questions. I'd love to hear from folks on ideas on how to expand our reach, but also, you know, are there types of
I think Jen just froze up. Sorry, Jenny, I think you just froze up for a second there.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so, you know, we thought this would be a good group to bounce some ideas off of, given the situation with COVID. I know several of you who are on the call from law enforcement have programs that you guys have worked on in the past that have largely been put on hold. So part of what we wanted to think about is, you know, is there other types of projects that we can do through Capital Coexist in the mini grant program that maybe are virtual in nature? Maybe they can be more interactive, build a platform of some sort for a safety topic. And then also, what are those safety topics? One of the things that the 2020 crash day that we've already talked about in previous meetings is showing us is that impairment and speed are major challenges, which, you know, we could expand Capital Coexist to include those because they certainly have an impact on our most vulnerable users, but as well as all users of the roadway system. But, you know, what would be the most effective or helpful things for you folks working in the local government arena, particularly given the COVID crisis? So I'd like to just open the floor to any ideas that you folks have, or if you have a particular need locally for any of the assistance that Jen talked about.
So Sandy, Tracy from Albany County. As you and I were kind of talking there before the meeting started, know, obviously a lot of our community-based programs have all been shut down since COVID started. And in all honesty, I have no set target date of when things will ever go back to, you know, normal, and using that in quotes. We've had to adapt and adjust quite a bit. Some of the programs that have been shut down is we've got, you know, the Choices program there in Altamont. That's with the schools and everything mostly being virtual and hybrid and not being able to bring the kids and everything. That's been closed since March. I used to do some speaking in the schools. That's pretty much on hold as well too. I did have one school district that attempted to at the beginning of the school year, but you know, with the way things are, you know, the sheriff really isn't interested in us putting ourselves in high risk situations. Our designated driver booths have been shut down. Our victim impact panels have been shut down. So needless to say, it's been quite a challenge. We've had to, and ways to adapt is obviously using virtual concepts. With the impact panel situation, you know, it's based mostly on our volunteer speakers who've suffered some sort of loss. None of them were interested in doing a live virtual Zoom kind of thing, just because there was no way to control the target audience on the other side to make sure they weren't sitting there, you know, drinking or being drunk at the time that they're watching the impact panel. So everybody was pretty much a no on that. I was able to get Sandy LaPlante, who's absolutely fantastic. The woman does so much for us, and I can't even begin to tell you. And I know that she would help others out too if there was a way. But she was very willing to at least let us video her, so that I was able to incorporate that into a link that our offenders could use. And I'll tell you how it ended up working out with us and my idea that I somehow managed to convey to our IT department came out phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And the responses that we've been getting from the survey questions from those who have watched it have really, really been impressive. You know, I was expecting that we'd get some people that would just write, you know, 1 or 2 words and then just hit submit to be done with it. And some of the reflections that they've put on there has been really heartfelt, and so much that I've even forwarded a lot of them to Sandy so that she can see that she's still making a difference in what she's doing. And I think that's great. Another thing that we've done is I had a member from, I think she was from CDPHP. She was looking to do some sort of virtual thing for their members. She actually came over here and we recorded us doing a demonstration of the fatal vision goggles with some information, educational information that was incorporated into that video that she was able to use during her live Zoom meeting. So I'll tell you, I think with the majority of the world adjusting to this virtual thing, it really it can be a successful outlook to do it. Obviously, trying to get your audience attention and knowing who your audience is one of the biggest challenges that I feel is part of that. But I definitely think that, you know, a little bit of time and a little bit of creativity to put all that together is going to be the way that we can continue keeping the outreach stuff going.
No, that's great. That's really helpful, Tracy. I think we might pick your brain later on just about how you achieve that and worked with Sandy to create that video. Just be good to know. Anybody from any of the municipalities, Bill, I'm picking on you, Bill Trudeau or Chris Wallen, are you aware of the school districts in your communities being active at all on any of these topics? I know the City of Albany has done a few demonstration projects as part of their bicycle and pedestrian master plan update. You know, have those gone okay with COVID? Any feedback from that perspective?
Those demonstration projects went well, and we're moving along, as you're aware, trying to progress that program, and we're going to continue. COVID interaction is definitely an issue for all of us. So doing this in this type environment isn't the same as going out in the street and meeting with people.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge we'll have certainly for the first half, if not all of 2021 with the mini grant program is the person-to-person interactive sort of activities, and are they even possible? That's just one aspect of the program. Any other thoughts, Chris?
No, I've had no contact with the school district since all this. I mean, I've had limited contact before. If we had a program that we put together, we reached out and we had a purpose, but I haven't seen them be very proactive on the other end of it, reaching out to the city about anything. I know that our Safe Routes to Schools project, the one that we did with Zoller, was a good one. And the school, they came out and said, no, we're really happy that we did that. And some of those bike rodeo events and things that we've had have all been received well, but I don't see them being really the most proactive of groups to reach out to do it. I think they'll participate if we have something in mind.
Thanks, Chris. Maureen, did you want to add something?
Thank you for inviting me again. Well, on a statewide level, what we've been trying to do, we're partnering with Students Against Destructive Decisions, the SAD chapters. We have a statewide coordinator on staff. She's actually part of a grant. And what we're doing is we're reaching out to college age younger drivers and doing a challenge. But how we're doing it is through the impairment on the 4th D of Drowsy. Drowsy is my program, trying to get younger drivers to realize the importance of drowsy and good sleep habits. Now, why I'm telling you all this is because what we're doing is we're going to colleges. We are embedding ourselves on college campuses with dean of students, with professors, with leaders within the administration who will champion this. And what we've done so far, we've identified 9 colleges throughout the state, and we've had some success. What SAD is telling us, my coordinator's name is Lauren Mead. Again, if you get leadership roles, leadership people within your schools, whether it's your principal, your administrator, whether it's high school, middle school, those pre-drivers leading up to high school, within the high school, the drivers, and then empower those leaders to carry the message for you. Right now in Schenectady County, which is my county that I oversee, New Choices is our best partner. They have the breadth and the scope to go into schools, high schools in Schenectady County. For the last couple of years, we've done a highway safety gathering for Schenectady County at the Stratton Air Force Base. And it's been very popular. Again, student leaders, bringing them together. What we're seeing here in this group, we're seeing it across the state. There's also a problem with Zoom exhaustion. Students maybe get 10 minutes where you have their attention, and if it's not an interactive program, you've lost them. So what we're trying to do is pivot and using some interactive tools to get buy-in from students on the younger driver issue. The impairment and speed, I'm just trying to think, how do we, what else do we do other than face-to-face? Again, we're finding this statewide. It's horrific right now. That's all I can offer.
Well, thanks, Maureen, and I appreciate the perspective, particularly in your role, since you work with a lot of the grantees through the governor's traffic safety committee. It is a huge challenge right now for us all. But I do like some of the thinking here that maybe there's some potential ideas in terms of, creating interactive, flashy things, surveys. I don't know. There's lots of internet tools that we could potentially encourage through this program and work with potential sponsor on developing something locally. Certainly the video campaigns, first person interviews and what have you, those are very impactful tools. If you have any other thoughts, feel free to interject them now.
Yeah, like if there's any keywords or terms that you feel like we should be using in the project eligibility, or like just in the examples of types of projects, so that we can kind of get these newer types, or like key terms we should use to attract different stakeholders. Schools is always, it's always a group that we're really interested in working with, and they are really difficult to contact, because they have a ton of things that they're trying to balance and are competing for their attention. So, you know, we occasionally get PTAs involved, but as you know, like the parents that run PTAs, there's a lot of change over there. So we will get a good contact for a couple of years and then lose them. So yeah, I mean, it's really, I think we've gotten a lot of really great projects in the past outside the box, but just really trying to like maybe change wording up or use a term to kind of rope somebody else into the to the program and do projects maybe aimed more towards drivers. Or I love the like the pre-driver kind of demographic, and really early on getting the safety messaging.
All right. Well, great. Thank you all for your input on that. We'll certainly continue to work on capital coexist solicitation, and hopefully at some point in the first part of the new year, you'll see something from us. With that, we will shift gears, and I will turn it over to Andrew Tracy to jump on the next couple of items on our agenda. So go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandy. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So at the last ROSAC meeting in October, we had a discussion regarding potentially forming a regional TIM committee, Traffic Incident Management Committee. Forming a TIM committee was identified as one of the recommended actions in New Visions in the operations white paper. And I believe in the safety white paper as well, as part of CDTC's New Visions update. And we received a lot of great information from Becky Gibson-Scott at the DOT's main office. Becky was involved in establishing regional TIM committees in many of the state's metro areas. And she provided us with a lot of great documents, guidance documents, example agendas from regional TIM committees throughout the state. And she even provided us with some contact information for local individuals who were interested in becoming involved in a regional TIM committee. Since then, Sandy and I learned that NISTOT staff has already gotten the ball rolling a bit on planning the formation of a Region 1 TIM committee. Sandy and I spoke to Leslie Bassett and Jim Huber back in November. Leslie Bassett manages the Traffic Management Center for Region 1 in Latham, and Jim Huber is the emergency manager for Region 1, although as Sandy and I learned, he wears many hats at any given time. But officially, he's the emergency manager for Region 1. I believe both Leslie and Jim are on the line today, and they offered to give us an update on the status of forming a Region 1 TIM committee. Leslie and Jim, are you available to discuss?
Yeah, I'm on. This is Jim. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't have much to offer right now. I did reach out to all the emergency managers for all the counties that we take care of. We take care of 8 counties. I sent them an email, let them know what we were trying to do, and I got some pretty good feedback from them. Reaching out to the sheriff's departments also for all the counties and see what I can get as far as feedback from them. I have received some stuff from them. People are still reaching out to me saying that they're interested. And I'm currently just putting together a list right now, and I'm hoping to have a meeting set up sometime this month before the holidays would be nice. I've reached out to counterparts across the state that are doing TIM committees just to get some advice from them and see what they had to say. And that's basically where I'm at right now.
So Jim, we have this forum, the ROSAC. If any individuals in the ROSAC are interested in participating, or if you know of anyone maybe local to your jurisdiction who would be interested in participating, Jim, is it okay if folks on the call reach out to you or to Leslie to try to put you in touch?
Most definitely, yes.
And Jim, I see that Leslie is typing to us in the chat as well. Thank you very much, Leslie. But Jim, is there any something that Sandy and I were discussing is what role could the MPO have in aiding the formation of a TIM committee, and what role could our ROSAC have in helping you out? So Jim, is there anything that you'd like to request of either Sandy or I or the greater ROSAC committee that might help you in planning the TIM committee?
Right now, no. The further I move along and the more I wrap my mind around what's going on, I'll probably have some requests for you.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the update, Jim. Sandy, did you have any questions for Jim at this time?
Nope, that sounds great. Thanks, Jim, for the update.
Yes, thank you very much. And I suppose I can move along to the next agenda item. Can I get the ability to share my screen, please, Sandy?
You should be all set.
Okay, let me give it a shot. Okay. Hello again. I have been keeping track of all the data available to me on the impact that COVID has had on transportation. I've been looking for local data as much as possible, but I've also been looking at national trends as well. So I'm here to provide another update on the impact of COVID on transportation in the capital region. So we were, throughout much of the early stages of COVID, we were provided with VMT data by Streetlight Data, Inc., which is a big data firm that aggregates travel data from smartphones and GPS-enabled vehicles. Streetlight supplied this data nationally for free through July 24th, and then after that, it moved behind a paywall. But their data suggests that by that time, around roughly June 18th, regional traffic had recovered back to its pre-pandemic baseline. Pictured here, the blue line on top is the total vehicle miles traveled for all 4 counties in the CDTC planning area. And as I mentioned, Streetlight suggests VMT recovered back in June. And anecdotally, people have been saying to me that it sort of feels that traffic has been back to normal for quite some time now, at least on many roadways throughout the region. Since then, Streetlight released a report outlining the shifts they've seen in travel in major metropolitan areas across the United States. So this data was not local to Albany, but they looked at many large urban areas throughout the country. And what Streetlight concluded was that even though VMT has recovered to roughly its pre-pandemic baseline, they've seen a big shift in the time of day and in the geographic distribution of vehicle travel. Pictured here is a chart that Streetlight released showing that there's been some sort of peak shaving effect that occurred between last fall and this fall, where they suggest that the traditional AM rush hour is actually gone, and that travel has instead shifted to midday. Streetlight's report, which was called Surprising Changes to Traffic congestion in urban areas, released on November 2nd. Had a lot of great data in it. Again, this was national data aggregated from many metro areas across the country. But Streetlight concluded that the traditional AM rush hour is essentially gone. And instead, people are choosing to make their trips midday. So traffic no longer has the traditional shape of an AM and a PM peak, but rather just a long plateau of travel during the midday hours. Streetlight attributed this shift to people choosing to run their errands midday, now that many individuals in many urban areas can work from home. They also attribute the shift to a large increase in delivery traffic throughout the day as well, due to increased shopping from home. Streetlight also concluded that the PM peak travel remains roughly the same. So the large decline in travel demand that we saw in the early stages of the pandemic following the New York on pause executive order, that's essentially gone. And Streetlight and some of the other big data sources I'll show you a little later, they've concluded that VMT essentially back to normal, although there has been a big shift in the time of day of travel. Streetlight also suggested that there's been a decrease in trips in city centers due to work from home in many sectors of the economy, and an increase in trips in the suburban and rural areas outside of traditional downtown areas. Some local data I've dug up. Google Maps publishes mobility reports. This is data collected from users of the Google Maps app. And I pulled the data for all 4 counties. Albany County is fairly representative of the region as a whole. And Google is reporting that there's been a 31% decline in trips to retail and recreation related destinations compared to the pre-pandemic baseline. Similar declines in trips to transit stations and workplaces, as you might expect, and a slight increase in trips to residential areas. And this trend present in Albany County, also seen in our other 3 counties as well. We also have more big data from Apple Maps. Apple also publishes a mobility trend report. Pictured here, you can see Apple's Maps routing request activity pre-pandemic. In March, you can see a sharp decline following New York on pause. Apple Maps data actually matches the Streetlight data we saw earlier, and Apple is also suggesting that regional VMT may have recovered to its baseline as early as June. Other modes of travel, we can take a look at transit trips in the region as reported by CDTA. The charts here are from their most recent monthly performance report, which I believe was published on Halloween, if I had to guess. And the monthly ridership on CDTA's fixed route lines declined sharply in March, as you would expect. Some recovery was seen over the summer, but in the last 2 months, there was another small decline seen there, the last 3 pumpkins on the graph, another small decline in ridership on CDTA lines. And this data is actually corroborated by another big data source I've been keeping tabs on, which is Transit App. Transit App is a smartphone app transit users use for scheduling, routing, service information. And Transit App has been publishing data by metro area, including for the greater Albany area. And Transit App's routing requests also saw a decline over the last couple of months compared to its recovery in the late summer. Transit use was down about 30% from the pre-pandemic baseline, but since then it's declined a bit more. The another data source I've been keeping an eye on. This isn't transportation related, but Open Table is a website that partners with restaurants to provide a reservation system. And they've been tracking the number of seated diners from online, phone, walk-in reservations. Their data does not include takeout orders, which is important to note. But following New York on pause, use of their app declined almost 100% in New York State. There's been some recovery since then, but that recovery has plateaued, as you would expect, through November. Open Table's reporting decline of about 70% in restaurant reservations. Finally, I've also been keeping tabs on some local roadways for which NISTOT provides permanent count station data. The data, I reached out to NISTOT recently. They stated that the data hasn't been updated since August, but a new update will be provided shortly. Until then, we have 3 count stations in the region for which we can get good data. Wolf Road pictured here, sharp decline back in March, small recovery, but not yet back to its pre-pandemic baseline. On US 9 in Latham, again, sharp decline in March, but through the end of August, the count data is reporting it's recovered almost to its pre-pandemic baseline. And lastly, there is a counter on I-87 just north of Saratoga Springs. Similarly, decline in March, slow recovery through the end of August. This count station is reporting that traffic is essentially back to normal on that section of I-87, North Saratoga County. So that's all the updated data I have to share. Just some closing thoughts. COVID obviously has had a very profound impact on travel, not just the time of day impact I mentioned, but also on the geographic distribution of travel demand. We're seeing some roadways that are seemingly more congested now than they were pre-pandemic, other roadways that service sectors of the economy that have slowed down. Those corridors are seeing less travel. The COVID is making us re-examine a lot of our prior planning assumptions and a lot of the conventional wisdom we've built up through the years about things like which roadways are congested, when they're congested, traditional rush hours may be gone, which corridors we expected to experience growth. And so we were planning expansion and mitigation activities on those facilities, but we should really re-examine due to the impact on COVID if those sort of mitigation activities would be necessary anymore. And even things like crash hotspots like Sandy was discussing, we can expect that COVID having such a big impact on regional travel demands and shifting traffic between roadways, maybe the traditional hotspots have moved as well for safety. So the bottom line is we need local data to get a good handle on what's happening in our region. I'm barking up every tree I can to try to find as much local data. I'm beginning to look into the NPM RDS data, the travel time data provided by Federal Highway, which is a great data source for taking a look at travel times on many major corridors throughout the region that are covered by the NPM RDS. I'll be taking a look at that data, and I'll also be trying to dig up traffic counts as well that are provided by NISTOT or as part of planning studies that CDTC is involved with. And I'm looking specifically for traffic counts where we can find a pair of counts at the same location, one count that was done recently and another one that was done pre-pandemic that can serve as a baseline. So we can look throughout the region and see where the traffic is shifting. So I'll be working on all of this in the coming months that was all the data I had to share with you. So thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions or any comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
Andrew, one thing I'd be interested in seeing is the detachment possibly between the numbers that you're showing and like parking.
Okay.
So, you know, you're showing that travel and VMT is up, but if you walk around downtown Schenectady, you know, our parking lots are still fairly empty. So
Right.
I can get some information about parking utilization and where that is. I'm sure you could get the similar information from Albany's Parking Authority.
Okay.
But I'd be interested to see if the VMT is the same, but people aren't parking downtown, then where in the world are all the cars going?
Right. Yeah. Any data you have to share, Chris?
Yeah,
I'd be
so
thrilled.
I will try to get that. Metroplex runs our lots, you know, and I know that, you know, they're moving to a digital system, but even now they're not at the capacity they were. So I'm a little surprised to see the VMT being up, but.
Right.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Chris, because our numbers, if you look at the same thing, they're down. But I don't know where these folks are going, and maybe that explains why the peaks are different. Maybe they're doing something different. Maybe I don't know what they're doing.
Well, one of the theories that has been floated nationally is, you know, with the advent of the takeout businesses, there's a lot more, you know, Uber Eats and, you know, all of these services that are sort of simply driving around and adding VMT to our system, but aren't necessarily stopping anywhere.
Right.
That whole delivery network has changed significantly. So that could be one possible factor, but I do like the idea of checking the parking utilization data, because that certainly would tell us, you know, where things are now versus where things were pre-COVID, because I know looking at my own office building, I mean, we have an empty parking lot. So they're not coming to our office building, but we were full, you know, more or less pre-COVID. So, you know, I agree. I think there's a lot more options. And I just saw a note in the chat about folks sort of driving around trying to find Wi-Fi hotspots. That's another strong possibility. I do see that here in the city of Albany quite a bit. So I do think this has definitely changed our travel patterns, and what will be interesting to see is how much of it becomes a new norm versus reverts back to previous behaviors when and if things sort of find their new equilibrium.
Right. I mean, that's the challenge for us as planners, is to try to get a handle on what's the permanent shift going to be. You know, are in a few years, is things going to be completely back to normal, or is work from home going to stick around? Is, as you mentioned, this you know, Uber Eats and DoorDash, those sorts of industries, are they going to stick around? Home deliveries, will they still be up? Streetlight, in their analysis of their data, they were saying that home deliveries are way up, and you know, I think anecdotally that's what we've seen, and that accounts for some much larger component of VMT than it did pre-pandemic. And they also suggested that, as I mentioned, travel in traditional downtown areas where you might find a lot of offices and parking garages, travel in those areas was down, but travel outside of the city centers was up. And they suggested that people are simply running their errands, you know, over the course of the day, when, and that explains why the traditional rush hours have shifted to the midday instead. So, as always, we're starved for data. We need more data to get a handle on what's going on. So that was all for me. Thank you very much, everybody who provided feedback, and I'll turn things back over to Sandy.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for all of that information. The next item on the agenda is I just wanted to highlight the new US DOT Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. This was put out by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration as part of October's Pedestrian Safety Month, which will be a recurring annual event. And New York State has shifted its pedestrian safety blitz through the CBC campaign to kind of coincide now with the month of October. You might have seen a lot of visibility PSAs during the month of October, which was great timing in terms of Halloween, getting that messaging out about being aware of folks using the roadway system, particularly pedestrians and cyclists who are vulnerable. The interesting thing about the new US DOT plan is that it's been critiqued in terms of how balanced it is with respect to, sort of pedestrian blaming. I'll phrase it that way. There's some schools of thought that feel like the way it was tailored is that the pedestrian is generally the one at fault, and it's not as balanced as some would like it to be. I think I would view the document as sort of just an additional resource to what we're doing here in New York. I think New York's campaign is a lot more balanced in terms of expressing the responsibilities on the roadway system for drivers and pedestrians. But the only thing I wanted to particularly highlight out of the new report, which is available on the NHTSA website, is sort of the four stakeholder themes. They did a bunch of maybe several listening sessions nationally on pedestrian safety, and over 180 comments were received. But they consolidated those comments into sort of four major groups, and the four groupings were related to speed. That we need to do a better job of not only setting speed limits, but how we are designing our roadway systems to encourage slower speeds, allowing the use of the speed camera technologies, doing more education on the dangers of speeding, and changing that mindset that people don't view speeding as a serious problem. The second broad theme was on roadway design and supporting pedestrian safety through traffic calming, establishing no car or slow zones in communities, conducting those pedestrian safety audits, and implementing complete streets policies, all of which are things that are supported through CDTC's programs and are eligible for a number of our funding pots for the planning and education work. The fourth theme was technology, supporting technology and new vehicle design. So remembering that one of NHTSA's roles in safety is dealing with the actual vehicle and how it's designed and how it can be improved. So including those connected and automated driving systems that allow drivers to see pedestrians sooner, emergency braking systems, and these sorts of technologies that can be built into the vehicles themselves. And then the final theme was on funding and addressing the lack of funding that prevents state and local governments from making needed pedestrian safety improvements from an infrastructure perspective. So those were the four broad themes. There's a number of action items that are listed in the national document that I would encourage you to take a look at. I'll have a link in the chat in a moment. But if you have any questions, let me know. And I'm just curious, I know we have two of the focus communities here, Schenectady and Albany, in terms of the statewide pedestrian safety action plan. I believe the city of Albany participated in the enforcement campaign back in October. I'm not sure if Schenectady did. I don't know if Chris is still on the call, but if either of you from Schenectady or Albany would like to just sort of weigh in on the participation and how things went, we'd be interested in hearing that.
Sandy, I have to get some information for you regarding the enforcement campaign from our enforcement guys.
Sure.
I don't have anything to share at this point in time.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
But, we are progressing our pedestrian safety project and we'll be looking to go to have PS&E documents completed spring of 21 with construction starting summer of 21 at this point in time.
Great, thanks, Bill.
And Sandy, we're on the same timeline. We're working with our consultant and actually Metroplex, and we have design in now. The biggest change I would say is just like everything else, and I know this is a big push from the DOT, is having a scope and a budget that is achievable. Signal costs are continuing to go up. I've heard that now that the thruway is done with cashless tolling, there may be some, respite from the storm because they had such a monopoly on the industry. But our original scope that was put in the PSAP, we're doing roughly half of it because the estimate came back twice the amount of the PSAP award.
Wow. Okay.
Just because it was a lot of signal work and we don't have signals that are in upgradable, and you know that the PSAP and the state, they don't want to pay for new signals. They just want to do the improvements that are called out. So the city couldn't, take on a, $1.3 million share on the project. So we reduced scope, and we are doing some positives, but it's always a constant thing is where your scope is bigger than your budget.
Sandy, I have to agree with Chris. We found the same thing, that once the consultant was working towards the draft design report, we found that the budget was significantly higher than what we put together in the document based on the information that we had at the time. So we're in the same boat. We're going to have to reduce scope to meet the budget because we can't take on any more as well.
Did you have the same problem, Bill? Was it related to the signal work itself, the hardware?
Mostly the signal work is what's driving it.
Okay, that's good feedback because I know Chris and I have gone around and around with DOT and Federal Highway on that topic, and I'm sure you have too, Bill. So
we did it right in the very beginning when they said you could put pedestrian signals in, but you couldn't put cabinets up.
right.
Well, what do you do with the old equipment that can't accept it? So, you're right. The rules have changed and had changed as they were developing the program. I think the concept is great. The idea is great. It just, it didn't allow for you to do the things you needed to do to make the improvements. So we're working on it. We're going to get something together, and it'll be, better to put something out there and achieve the goals at as many locations as you can, even if it's not all of them.
Understood. Yeah, thanks for that feedback, both of you. Appreciate it.
And then you were talking about enforcement. Maureen was actually on a call or a meeting. I work with Maureen quite a bit in other capacities and other groups, but the sheriff's office was actually doing a lot of pedestrian safety things in the city. And but that wasn't in the PSAP. That wasn't downtown. It was on Route 5 where we had specific areas, but they were doing a lot of almost the See and Be Seen campaign, going out there and talking to people about trying to cross right. And that's brought up, our next project, which is areas of Route 5 that, you can do as much as you can with education and enforce. It's just very difficult. People don't break those habits of crossing those certain areas of the road. And, Central Avenue, Route 5, I don't know how much we could probably spend our careers investing time and money into trying to fix that road. And I don't know if you're going to do it.
Chris, the beautiful thing is, even though the county sheriffs took the lead on the PSAP program for enforcement and education, they partnered so closely with the City of Schenectady PD, and City of Schenectady actually went out and did enforcement during PSAP, and we just got the report in. So City of Schenectady and the county as a whole are doing really great things. Talk about a model for a PSAP plan when you've got your county sheriffs and your locals working together in conjunction for, to target those hotspots. Love it.
That's great to hear. Maureen, I may reach out to you following the meeting to kind of get in touch with the county sheriff contact, and maybe we can loop them into this group.
Oh, he would love that.
Great, thank you. I just put in the chat pod the link to the Federal Highway, or I should say the US DOT Pedestrian Safety Action Plan if you want to take a look at it. And I think that's all I had on that particular topic. Any other questions or conversation about pedestrian safety? Okay. So we will move on. Status of upcoming planning activities. We'll start with the State Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan. So New York State, as we've talked about this before, is developing a statewide roadway safety departure action plan intended to be similar in nature to what they did with the pedestrian safety action plan, where they looked at statewide data, looked at causal factors to roadway departure crashes, and are going to be identifying countermeasures that can be implemented in systemic projects across the state to help improve and reduce that type of crash. And as of now, the department through the main office is inching closer to having a draft report available for review. I anticipate that being available to our group probably in the first part of 2021. So we'll keep that on our kind of a future agenda for perhaps the next meeting. The plan, as I understand it as of today, and this can always change, is that there will be some set aside of funding for a systemic safety program, much like we had with the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. The preliminary data analysis indicates that the capital region would not, in sort of the definition of, much like we identified focus cities or communities for pedestrian safety, we're not at the top of the list in this particular category. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be resources available, particularly for the county road systems or some of the more rural communities in our region that are experiencing roadway departure crash problems, to participate in this program and also to develop systemic programs, approaches to address them. So stay tuned on that. I think we'll be able to talk more about that at our next meeting, and hopefully sooner rather than later. Any questions about that particular topic? Okay, hearing none. Just three quick reminders from me. The linkage program solicitation is out right now. We are looking at a December 16th deadline. As you know, we fund a wide variety of projects that link transportation with land use. We also look at operations, we can look at safety, we can look at corridor analyses, we can do a whole range of things in the linkage program related to transportation. So if you're even thinking about that, we did address, not address, but sort of altered the match requirement for this year in hopes that it would make things a little easier for local governments to participate who might be strapped for cash. We're allowing a portion of the local match to be contributed through in-kind services. So keep that in mind. If you haven't looked at the new solicitation materials, I'll post a link in the chat pod to it, and you can take a look. And as I said, the deadline for that is December 16th. Related to the linkage program, we still have the technical assistance program, which is a rolling program available for local governments to ask for assistance on a wide variety of land use and transportation topics. We can help with a safety assessment of a corridor. We can look at crash data for you. We can even kind of help you answer a question that maybe you've gotten from an elected official or from a member of the public with an area of concern in your community. There's a whole range of things that are possible through the technical assistance program. If you have any thoughts about that, feel free to reach out to me, and I will put a link to the materials related to that program in the chat pod as well. And then the final topic in terms of CDTC planning activities for me for the moment is the bus lane feasibility study. This RFP has been in development for a while. CDTA is currently reviewing it. We'll definitely be reaching out to local government partners and NISDOT for input on the RFP before it goes out. We expect that to happen in the next couple of weeks. So we hope to have a consultant solicitation sometime in the first part of 2021. That bus lane feasibility will have a lot of operational components to it. So I think it will be one that this working group, I keep saying working group, but advisory committee will have a role in sort of vetting and sort of keeping tabs on, if you will, throughout the planning process. With that, I'll pass the next one over to Andrew on the regional signal timing program.
Yes, the regional signal timing program in the UPWP in our work program was put on hold due to COVID. I would hate to retime signals to current conditions if current conditions aren't going to last much longer and if traffic is going to continue to shift. That said, once we feel that traffic has stabilized for the long term and has returned to a new normal, then I think it would be very important to retime our signals, because there would have been such a huge shift in traffic, as we discussed before, both in terms of shifting between corridors and shifting over the time of day. So I do think the regional signal timing program is very important. I think, but we really need traffic to sort of settle into a long-term stable equilibrium before we go around retiming all the signals. So we're going to continue to monitor all the traffic data that we can collect, and hopefully maybe next year put out a solicitation for signals to be retimed. But for the moment, that project is still on hold.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. On the final project, again, it's on hold, is the Route 378 bridge study. DOT is currently rescoping it and to develop a new RFP that will hopefully be going out sometime in the first part of 2021, which will involve some level of evaluation of replacing the 378 bridge over the Hudson River between Troy and basically Albany and Rensselaer counties. So stay tuned on that one as well. Related to any planning activities, while we have everybody today, if there's any needs from local government's perspective on anything related to safety or operations that you're struggling with, whether it's COVID related or not, we'd be interested in knowing if there's something that CDTC can assist you with. Obviously, as we talked earlier, the crash data is available, and we can assist you with navigating how to access that information and how to interpret it. We'll certainly in 2021 be having a new platform developed from NISDOT to access crash data that will be available in the second half of 2021, which will replace the current system, which is a web-based tool called the Accident Location Information System. So there'll be a lot happening in 2021 for sure, and certainly in safety and likely in operations. So we do expect this group to be pretty active next year. Any thoughts or any specific needs from anybody in the Zoom meeting today? Okay, hearing none, you can certainly email myself or Andrew if you think of something after the call today. We're certainly interested in building this group. We're going to be reaching out to more to hopefully generate some more members from some of the other surrounding areas. As of now, preliminary, we're targeting the second week. I guess it's the second week. It might be the first week of February, week of February 8th for our next meeting. I'll talk with Andrew in the next few days to kind of establish a meeting schedule for 2021. From the folks on the call today, we had pretty good turnout. Does this time of day work for most people? About 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Is this convenient?
Yeah, 1 o'clock works fine for me, Sam.
Okay. Okay, if that's general consensus, we'll try to keep the meetings early afternoons for next year. If there's any particular days of the week that don't work, we'll likely do it on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Thursday. And with that, did anybody else have anything they wanted to add today before we close?
Hey, Sandy, just before you hang up, though, I just want to talk to you quick on a sidebar.
Sure, we can do that. All right. Well, with that, I think today's meeting is closed. Have a great holiday season, everyone. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And we will see you in 2021, where we can kick this terrible year to the curb and move on. Have a good holiday season, everybody. We'll see you in the new year.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Hey, Stan, it doesn't matter if there's anybody